What's going on, everybody? It's ETA Prime back here again. Today we're going to be testing out the all-new 1X GPU 2 with the 1X Player X1 Mini. Now, if you're not familiar with this new eGPU dock, basically what we've got here is one of the most powerful AMD eGPUs on the market. It supports OCuLINK, USB4, and it's got an extra M.2 slot so you can add storage to whatever device you have it connected to. And this is using the AMD Radeon RX 7800M. So it's definitely a nice upgrade over the 7600 MXT that we've seen on the market for quite some time. A lot of manufacturers have been putting out those eGPU docks. These are all-in-one eGPUs, so we don't need to add a desktop GPU to this. We don't need to add a power supply. And it's got extra I/O for your handheld or your mini PC. So far, this thing has been working really well with everything that I've tested it with, but at the time of making this video, AMD hasn't officially launched the 7800M just yet. It's going to be coming in laptops, but I guess the first one we have here is an eGPU. Now, we're going to be using the 1X Player X1 Mini, and if you're not familiar with this, what we've got are detachable controllers, and this is powered by the AMD Ryzen 7 8840U. This is the 32 gig model, so we do have 32 gigs of LPDDR5X RAM with this unit. It supports USB4 up top here. We've got another USB-C port on the bottom and OCuLINK. Now, unfortunately, the way that 1X has kind of set this unit up is OCuLINK is actually on the bottom of the 1X Mini. It's got a kickstand built in, so if you do have this set upright with that kickstand, it's kind of hard to get to that OCuLINK port. So usually I just kind of set this thing on its side. I think it looks pretty decent. Usually have both screens going, screensaver on one of them, gameplay on the other. In this video, we're mainly going to be testing the OCuLINK port, but by the end, we're going to do kind of a comparison between USB4 and OCuLINK performance on the 1X Mini. Some people might want to pick up an eGPU like this for a different handheld, let's say the ROG Ally X, which doesn't support OCuLINK, but it does have USB4. This eGPU will work with that. It'll basically work with any x86 device that has Thunderbolt 3, Thunderbolt 4, or USB4. Unfortunately, the new Snapdragon X Elite chips don't support external eGPUs yet. That's something I've been keeping an eye on. Soon as they do, or if they ever do, I will be doing some testing with those. But let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to connect this to my game capture so we can get an idea of what's going on here. Just to give you a look here, this X1 Mini is powered by that 8840U, and this is the 32 gig version. So we've got 32 gigs of LPDDR5X. We've still got access to the Radeon 780M graphics, but we're not going to be using those because we've got the Radeon 7800M. At the time of making this video, the official driver over on AMD's website does work for this card, but everywhere it says it's Radeon, so I guess it's not officially released yet, but we've got 12 gigs of GDDR6, and we're connected over OCuLINK with this. I did want to give you a look here because this is very important. Right here, we're running at PCIe X4 4.0. If we were to plug this in over USB 4, it would be PCIe X4 3.0. So we do get that extra bandwidth using OCuLINK. The 1X GPU 2 does have that boost button up front. So if we run firmware here, you can see that in normal mode, our TGP or total graphics power is 140 to 150 watts. And on their website, they state that it's around 130. With everything that I've tested so far, it's just a bit more, but as soon as I enable that button, it does jump up to 180 to 190 watts. So with that boost button enabled, it will unlock some more performance here. It's just going to take those clocks up higher for us. For most games, I mean, you won't need it, but since it's there, I'm going to keep it enabled for everything that we're testing here. Another thing I should have mentioned here is that the 8840U in the 1X Mini is running at a 30 watt TDP. I've got the 1X console enabled, so we're maxed out there because we don't need to worry about power draw from the battery. This is all going to be powered from the dock itself, 100 watt PD charging out. And the first thing I want to take a look at are some benchmarks. 3D Mark Steel Nomad coming in with a pretty impressive 3,205, and given that this is a mobile GPU, not doing too bad. Firestrike came in with a 31,034. And finally, Time Spy with a 14,223. Just to give you an idea, on the iGPU in the 1X Mini, we're sitting around 3,400 maximum with this score, so we've got a giant boost in GPU performance. We're going to jump right into Cyberpunk 2077 because there's a few different settings that I want to test with this. Right now, we're at 1440p ultra settings with no FSR, so it's a true 1440p. and as you can see up in the top left hand corner, that GPU is pulling around 150 watts. But I wanted to see what this would do with ray tracing, and as a lot of us already know, ray tracing isn't great on AMD cards, but still, we're going to take it up to Ray Tracing Ultra. And with this preset, FSR automatically goes to the auto setting, so it does scale from 1440p, and it's still not quite enough, as you can see. And I've tested ray tracing with this game on a lot of higher-end AMD cards, desktop variants. Never had great performance, but recently CD Projekt Red did give us something that will help out quite a bit with this. Now, it's not the end-all be-all when it comes to performance. If you want to run something like this with Ray Tracing Ultra, then you're just going to need a more powerful card. And to tell you the truth, I don't mind running this game at Ultra 1080p. I still think it looks great. But with FSR 3 and AMD's FrameGen enabled on this 7800M, we're now up to an average of around 84 FPS with Ray Tracing Ultra on an AMD mobile card. Another thing I wanted to test out was 4K on a very well optimized game, Forza Horizon 5. So right now we're at 4K, no FSR, no fidelity cast. Just move down to here to show you. We don't have any kind of resolution scaling going. And we've got the graphics set to Ultra. With this, yeah, it's going to run it just fine. We don't need to scale this image or anything like that. We're seeing an average of 91 FPS with Forza Horizon 5 at 4K Ultra. I also tested out the extreme setting, and we got an average of around 68 FPS, so it did dip on down, and it never went under 60, but Ultra still looks really good here, and you can definitely play this all day long. Built-in benchmark for Shadow of the Tomb Raider, highest settings, I always go back here, 1440p, we got an average of 122 FPS. I also tested out 1440p very high settings with Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Believe it or not, this is definitely a harder one to run, maxed out settings. It does have some ray tracing that you can enable, and at very high, which is the highest setting that we have here, it does automatically turn it on. But this card is handling it just fine, and in some cases when there's lots of particles on screen, you can see it dips down to the high 60s, but for the most part, we saw an average of 78 FPS. God of War Ragnarok, Ultra settings, 1440p, no FSR right now, but I'll tell you, once you get into battle, you will need some FSR enabled. So it does get real close to going under 60 just like this, and there's not a lot going on right now. But as soon as you're in the heat of battle with these settings here on this 7800M connected over OCuLINK, I've seen it go as low as 44 FPS. So FSR 3.1 here set to around balanced would definitely help you out, or you could just always drop it down to 1080. Another thing I was really interested in here was the difference between USB4 and OCuLINK performance using the same exact setup here. Same settings, running benchmarks with Cyberpunk 2077, 1440p, Ultra, so that's the Ultra preset. Over OCuLINK, we had an average of 87 FPS. Over USB4, we had an average of 66. So basically, with Cyberpunk, going to USB4 from OCuLINK is going to lower that performance by 24%. I also tested out Tomb Raider 1440p, highest setting, OCuLINK 122, USB4 101. And finally here, we've got Red Dead 2. And this was a significant drop. Now, it's still very playable like it is, 1440p Ultra. Over OCuLINK, 132 FPS on average. Over USB 4, 98 FPS. Some games are really going to be different, and one of the big reasons I always suggest OCuLINK is just the compatibility and speed there. We've got a much faster bandwidth, and if you can get away with it, if your device does have OCuLINK, it's always best to connect your eGPU over that. So far, I've been really impressed with the new 1X GPU 2. That 7800M really does kick it up a notch from all of the other ones on the market right now with those 7600M XTs. There's a bunch of them on the market, and don't get me wrong, I mean, they're great performers for an all-in-one GPU dock, but you know, if you can spend a little more and pick up something with, let's say, the 7800M, I think it would be well worth it in the end. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. Really appreciate you watching. If you want to see the 1X GPU 2 connected to any other device, just let me know in the comments below. We can go with the ROG Ally X or even the MSI Claw, see how it does with Intel. Let me know down below. And like always, thanks for watching.